I, Vlakar, the Minister of War for the proud avian species, the Lechinu, the largest and most powerful star empire in the galaxy, have a difficult task. One that I must explain to our diplomat in terms she will understand, based on our intelligence reports of the United Human Confederation. Allow me to begin by recalling the events that led to this moment. Our diplomat, Vulmira, came into my chambers in a rage. You must understand that when a hierarch of our species is in a rage, they destroy their environment with their very sharp talons. In this case, 2 vases and an antique desk that was a gift from the UHC Admiral Hirohito of the United Human Confederation, a show of respect given to me when she was but a captain. She demanded my intelligence reports on the UHC and the Earthlings' military resources. When asked why, Vulmira grabbed me by my throat with those talons and nearly lifted me from my chair. Our species having hollow bones, this means that we are still rather light to move or lift. The fire in her eyes told me she intended war, and wanted to know how feasible war was for us. I eventually slapped her talon away and simply told her I would advise against war with the humans. She punched me. Not in the way that, say, a human with their blunt fist would, but in the way that a bird of prey would prefer, what humans call a falcon punch, just without the killing velocity to it. You see, in Lechinu culture, this is a direct challenge to our honor, pride, or right to exist. One does not challenge an avian race to prove its pride. I reluctantly agreed to make this report, but I wish to begin this report by saying the grave insult and expected apology of our diplomat, Vulmira of the House of Clouds, before the end of the day, lest she find herself given the same challenge. Note from my report briefing for any would-be diplomat reading this. I, Admiral of the Fleet, Vlakar, need you to understand that the human military is not organized nor composed like ours. We have the fleet, which means our entire military. I will start by saying, yes, we are more technologically advanced than humans in every way, from plasma weapons, to shields, to metallic alloys, to the speed of our engines. But I will not fight the humans. I am no beta male coward, and I would not have arrived in this position if I was not willing to kill without hesitation. If my military arm and guile ever faltered, I imagine no end of my successors would seize the opportunity to remove me, politically or physically, depending on if my skill in battle failed me, or my skill in the war room among our politicians faltered for a moment. We did not become the greatest, largest empire in the galaxy, without extensive military strength and strong leaders. That being said, if we go to war with the humans, I begin this report by saying I will resign in protest. Not only because many in the human admiralty are my friends, and therefore my judgment will be compromised, but because I will not order the slaughter of our own warriors and quagmire that will be such a war on our friends, family, soldiers and colleagues. Simply put, I will not issue orders I know will result in the deaths of millions upon millions of Lechinu for no gain. Allow me to begin by stating this. Unlike our fleet, which comprises our space, ground and defensive forces, the human military is composed of 5 separate divisions. Please understand none of what I'm about to say is exaggeration, nor is it unverified without extensive intelligence and cooperative exercises conducted in cooperation with the Galactic Council. I am merely providing the required commentary to put the numbers and citations into perspective. As with any military report, it is required to give context to the politicians, so they can understand what exactly they are reading. I will now explain the introduction and then give an extensive discussion of each of the military divisions of the human military. Please note I will be discussing this in the order in which our intel reports judge each division, as most sane to complete madness. The first of the human military divisions are the Army. Yes, they still keep a dedicated ground fighting unit whose sole purpose is actions on planetary bodies. Yes, they possess and use mechanized suits, power armor, tanks and infantry. I assure you, they are not something I wish to see our birds fight. Second is the Blue Water Navy. As outdated as the concept may seem to us, on every single world with liquid water bodies of any sort, water, methane, nitrogen oxide, or even sulfuric acid, the humans have deployed blue water vessels to surprisingly great effect. We will go over this and its abilities. Despite the fact that no human has the biology to dive deeper than 50 human meters before encountering difficulties. Third, the Human Air Force. Yes, you heard me correctly. Humans maintain an extensive ground-based air-to-space and conventional and atmosphere aircraft force. whose job is to protect the skies and maintain total terrestrial orbital airspace control, as well as launching fighter and bomber craft from planetary bodies without vessels present. Some of the aircraft even have spacefold drives for limited hyperspace jumps. This I will explain further momentarily. Fourth, the Blackwater Navy, referred to as the UHN United Human Navies, is, in fact, a collection of thousands of different ship philosophies built by individual shipyards and colonies, with one core aspect across all ship types: railguns, which I will explain why this is a threat that our diplomat has lightly discounted, and the trademark honeycomb hull design of human ships, which some vessels have overcome 90% structural integrity damage, and continue to fight because of it. We will discuss this momentarily. Lastly, and by far the most insane of the human military divisions, the Marines. They are an animal all their own. Yes, the human military has a separate division away from their navies for counterboarding, boarding actions, planetary landfall operations, and amphibious assaults within terrestrial grounds to win service. Let us begin with the Human Army, referred to as UHFA, United Human Frontline Army. Official report upon the human military for diplomatic intelligence action. Section 1. The Army, Part 1. The human army is composed of thousands of variants of units. They are the least uniform military in the entire galaxy, and you would believe that would be their weakness. Any cursory glance at them would determine they are in fact a divided rabble of different levels of training that could easily be swept aside, but let me assure you, that is the most incorrect determination. Their variety and unique unit formations are their greatest strength. Let me highlight some of these units for you, the foremost troubling and most enduring of their army. First is the Scottish and their Royal Black Watch in particular. The Royal Black Watch in this year of 2503 can trace their history back to the pre-literature production of the humans, literally a unit that has evolved and changed over the last 1,500 years of its existence. The Royal Black Watch on the surface looks like a parade unit. Defenders of the human diplomats, they act as their escorts both figuratively and ceremonially for diplomats, politicians, and high-ranking members of human societal government. Let me assure you that the nearly 2 demi-macro blades that they carry upon their backs are not for show. They make wicked use of them. Every single one of these blades can be swung at nearly 18 kilometers per hour, and redirected upon a miss with a precision we would have only found possible with the purification machines encountered in the Maldives Nebula. Yet these humans wield them as easily as you or I would wield a knife or dagger. Furthermore, every single one of their number isn't just power armor certified, but has passed the Human's Gunslinger program. The Human Gunslinger program requires super sentient reflexes for most species to pass, and has a washout rate of 98%. This means that members of this Blackwatch unit must pass this program to even apply for consideration. Every single member of a unit is able to operate a human vehicle, usually a variety of space, air, mechanized, and naval, and at least 2 other species whom the humans may encounter vehicles of a similar purpose and type. Some would argue the diplomats in the room are the best educated and highest trained, but those who have read the intelligence reports know that is a lie. It is these humans in their black armor and wearing the plaid patch of Highlanders that are the pinnacle of training, education, and preparation. Let me tell you a story of the Blackwatch, a legendary act of defiance in the early days of humanity's joining of the galactic community and its Senate. In 2304, just 2 years after their acceptance, we were in the midst of the Hive Triarch War. No one had managed to land upon one of the highest planets alone. Orbital bombardment can only get so much done, and anti-orbital weapons eventually win against ships. After all, they have a whole planet to take hits. You have a ship hull. It was determined a joint effort would be made. The human ships were not allowed to join. We felt they were too few to defend their own worlds, and extended to launch an assault. However, seeing as dedicated ground troops were rare among species, and the Terran's abundance of such ground troops, we decided to allow their army to send several units to support the grand actions. What they sent looked brutish and primitive. Power armored troopers in heavy thick titanium plate. They mounted these exosuits with a variant of weapon systems. Our logistic technicians had a devil of a time supplying such vehicles, considering the humans hurled physical objects from their primary weapons instead of energy pulses. When we landed upon Arat 3, the Hive descended upon us with a ferocious might of billions. For 7 days we fought for our beachhead, and then the admirals were given permission from the council to prove our resolve and bombard the site to dust so we could establish a beachhead even if it were irradiated. Now the problem. We had nearly 6 million troops on world and would need to evacuate. The Black Watch stepped forward with 4 companies and informed us that they would be the last off the planet. They had been the first to set foot upon the world at their insistence, and they had suffered 1 casualty in their division, just 1. I want to remind you by this point, we had entire army groups that were disbanded out of mercy. Their casualties so high that even combining multiple damaged units was deemed too psychologically devastating to continue to use the few survivors. Those 4 companies made a perimeter around the starport, and we prepared as we fled and fell back. Other units joined them but were actively being withdrawn, so the battle lines were getting thinner as time wore on. When their battle began, the legend of the Black Watch was proven. For 6 days we were allowed to evacuate, even after every single other being but the Hive and Black Watch were off the planet. They kept fighting. The Black Watch were cut off, and for 2 final days we tried to figure out how to evacuate them. Terrans being a relatively new race at the time, we did not wish to report that one of their elite units were utterly destroyed. The Black Watch held that line. Even against the elite guards of the Hive, towering monstrosities of anthropods. They possess exoskeletons that can stop some capital ship low-caliber weapons. These massive creatures can break buildings with a single blow. The Black Watch held the line. The Treyarch became scared of them. The telepathic transmissions we picked up from the planet were warnings against the ones in black armor. Imagine that. A species whose war tactic is the endless swarm of pincers, incisors, claws, and chitinous armor plating, being terrified of barely 480 soldiers. The Black Watch held the line. The Black Watch told us to nuke the planet with them on it. With great reluctance we did. We bombarded the world until it was a tomb. Nothing should have survived. We lost nearly 200 vessels performing the bombardment, but we hardened ourselves. Every single micron of the soil was blown apart, and the planet was surrounded by an ash cloud. The radiation alone would have killed entire galactic civilizations across 1,000 colonies. But humans are from a deaf world. As the fleet made transit to leave the system, and the devouring Hive was mourning the destruction of the world, we received a transmission from Marat Free. Garbled and hard to understand, we sent a scout ship back. The scout ship returned with 3.5 companies. All but 20 beings of the 480 we left there survived. The Royal Black Watch we had thought dead upon that world. As the commander stepped from the decontamination unit, I asked how they had survived. The unit commander, whom we did not realize was female to this point, removed her helmet. Yes, the human military has fully integrated its females into the military. Imagine that, Ambassador. Their females are just as capable of frontline warfare as our males. But her reply was only 5 words. Nukes are a million inconvenience. End section number 1. The Army, Part 1. Sincerely, Admiral of the Fleet, Vlakar. Admiral of the Fleet from circa 2223 to 2504.